We're going to get started. We'll start our work meeting, and we have Reverend Wilkie here to give us an invocation. We're ready for you.
I guess you want us to start with prayer.
Yes.
First of all, might I say it's good to be back in a room that looks normal. It's not totally normal yet, but it's about that way. Because looking at a computer on a little teeny screen about the size of a postage stamp doesn't really cut it. Let us pray. Today, on this beautiful day, we're able to meet our God because God is ever before us. It's a loving God that helps us every day. Yes, I know there are times when we each may ignore God's plans for our lives. Today, with the council in full and a new mayor, may we all say a word of thanks. Praise the Lord for each council member and the mayor alike. Give to each of us the graces of your love, for we pray in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend Wilkie. We appreciate that. Brian is going to lead us in the pledge.
Please rise. Repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, are we just turning it over to Charlene?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's do it.
Thank you. Hello, good evening, afternoon. How are y'all? Hi, guys. So I'm super excited for this conversation and excited to welcome Shalene Gee from Zions Bank. She's on Zoom, so she'll be doing a part of this presentation. And really quick, she'll introduce herself. I just want to show you what we're going to do here, get us launched. So today, we are here to talk about public asset management in general. And we're going to be talking about it in terms of our opportunity to redevelop 100 West St. George Boulevard. So those two city-owned properties, the one that we've owned for quite a while, where the Inn and St. George, Inn at St. George and Bicycle Collective is, and then the one we just purchased where the car dealerships are on the other corner. So we're going to be talking about that, and as a part of that conversation, we have had the opportunity to participate in a study that's being done statewide by the Gardner Policy Institute to look at how municipalities and other public institutions manage public assets to get the best benefit for the community and the organization. And so Shalene's going to talk to us a little bit about that and give us kind of an overview about what that looks like so we have a broad background and broad perspective. And then we'll dial it in with some of the questions that I already sent to you. We'll just kind of walk through those just as a discussion to really talk about 100 West St. George Boulevard. And then we'll use some of this information for this project specifically, but then it'll help inform as we move forward with our other strategies and plans as we develop this kind of management process for all of our whole portfolio going forward. So I am going to turn it over to Shalene. I will stop sharing, and we'll listen to her presentation, and I gave you a copy of what she's going to be sharing as well in case you want to make notes. All right, James, we're ready.
Can you hear me and see me?
We can.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me join you in your conversation today. It's a real privilege for me, and I was hoping to be there in person, but it didn't work out. So hopefully I'll be able to meet you all in person soon. I just wanted to give you a quick overview. As Charlene said, I'm Shalene Gee. I'm with Zions Bank, and for about a year or so now, we've been working with municipalities and others across the state to help think about how, as a state, and how each of you as a community can understand and manage your real estate assets to get the maximum public benefit that you want. And so I'm just going to show you a little bit of a slide presentation to give you a sense of how we're thinking about that in the biggest picture, and that hopefully will set the stage for some of the conversation today. So let me see if I can pull this up. Are you able to see that?
Yes.
Great. So these are slides I wanted to share for just a couple of reasons. One, to give you all a picture, literally, of other of the materials that other folks are seeing across the state as it relates to public asset management. So you can kind of think about your own community and your own project in this context. And we'd love your feedback on this. And we also wanted to share with you how we're talking about it in case it's helpful today, and I hope it will be. So a quick overview, definitions and scope. I think all of you know this, but we just make it clear when we're talking about this that we're talking about real estate assets, land and buildings owned by cities, as well as any other public entity in the state, including school districts, your transportation authorities, housing authorities, and so on. And then public asset development, we're talking about the professional practice of identifying and understanding what real estate you own, and then what you do with it as you see fit and as benefits your community. Anything from selling to a range of other things that we're talking about. The purpose of this is we hope, we'd like to see as a state community, greater public benefit. One of the things that we know is that a lot of communities don't know the assets that they own. If they do, they don't think about them in some of the ways that can get greatest public benefit from them. And they're not always able on their own to think about how to connect them to some of the other major efforts in the state and best practices that generate greater public benefit. One of those is really thinking about healthy communities in a very large sense that I'll show you about in just a second. If I can pull this down. This work started a couple of years ago out of a conversation that's happening across the country and even globally. The assumption was that publicly owned real estate is the greatest wealth segment in the world, and that at the national level, it's dwarfing public debt. And we're finding that that is holding true, as a lot of other states and communities are finding, down to the city level, certainly the state level, and all the way down to a smaller level, school districts and things like that. To give you a sense of the scope, when Salt Lake County initially looked at this a couple of years ago, they found that within the county boundaries, as you can see there, quite a large real estate portfolio. That's an underestimated assessment of the land holdings in Salt Lake County. And so we wanted to help communities think about how to manage those assets and facilitate conversations about it. In Utah, we're doing this, we're trying to be really careful about it and really collaborative and share a lot of information with each other so that we make sure we get this right. We're helping communities map and value their assets if they haven't done that already. We're working with the league and others who have endorsed this and want to see this done. And then really pertinent to the conversation today, we're looking with at specific projects with different communities, because a lot of the thought about this kind of work is very theoretical. And until you really get down to talking about some specific projects, it remains theoretical. And so we're working with a lot of communities and want to work with you to think about actual projects that you have on the ground. And then we're working with folks to try to move those projects forward and think about all the different questions at play as you move them forward, how to maximize benefit, how to set up financing and funding for those projects, how to partner with the private sector, a range of things. As Sherlane said, we're working with the Gardner Policy Institute right now to get their support in thinking about public policies around this and set some guiding principles and questions out there that cities want to think about. And we're using a couple of frameworks to do that, and we'll share with you today. some of our priorities, and again, would love your feedback on this, want to work with you to think about if we have these priorities right, but this is the way that we've put some frameworks around this. Helping cities create new public revenue streams from some of these development projects. We're making some assumptions that that new revenue is incredibly important, particularly in the current moment. We want to address social determinants of health, and we're working with the healthcare sector to define what that is in very broad terms, as you can see there. Everything from general economic development initiatives to very specific projects on education, food, health behaviors, transportation, and income and employment. And we want to support a range of vertical infrastructure strategies to do that. You can see those there too. And then we also want to support existing growth and economic recovery initiatives and existing local plans wherever we can, and see how we can make those come to fruition. Give you a little sense about the scope of the Gardner Policy Institute. They'll be working with some of these communities that are doing demonstration projects, as we call them. This is their scope. They're conducting research to help communities understand best practices related to public asset management, how to partner with the private sector, and also to help think about that link between development of publicly owned real estate and addressing social determinants of health. You can see some of the scope there. I want to just go down to the line of inquiry segment down there at the bottom. The result of this research, which will be produced in around May, will be a set of best practices about how to undertake an inventory, and then some guiding principles about how you communicate with each other and with the public there about the value of your public assets, how you think about social determinants of health, how you develop a management plan for your assets, what is the best role for the public sector partners, the best role for the private sector partners, and what are the options there? And then how can we all work together as a state and as specific local communities to avoid unintended consequences? And so each of the cases where we're working with communities, we are sharing the information that we receive through this kind of research, and we're also asking for you to help inform us about what that research should look like, and what some of the experiences that you're seeing there on the ground.
Great. Thank you, Shalene. Do you have any questions for Shalene about that really quick? That's a lot of info. You'll get more familiar with it, I promise. I was a little bit overwhelmed when I first heard about it too, and I learned something every time I hear her talk about it. Okay, all right. Well, thank you, Shalene. And Shalene's going to stay here, so she'll be able to answer any questions and jump in as we're going through this process. She's going to kind of help me discuss this as we go through and look at the slides. So I'm going to go back and share our slides. And pick this up. So now let's pop into this discussion. So this is the property, just to get us all familiar with how we're going to talk about this large scope that Shalene just described with public asset management as our long-term goal, and this strategy that we'll do in terms of this demonstration project that we have the opportunity to do because of timing with this critical redevelopment of part of our downtown. So 1.9 acres on the northwest corner of that intersection, 1.6 acres on the northeast corner of that intersection. And again, just to keep everybody that's calling in, this is our main street, this is St. George Boulevard, this is Ancestor Square here. So, all right. So as we're thinking about public asset management, and specifically for this project, there's some objectives that we need to kind of start walking through as we sort of kick this off and really start thinking as a council what we want. Just a bit of background, many of you will remember that we had started this project with the Inn at St. George and Bicycle Collective property on the northeast corner about 2 years ago, right before I got here, 2.5 years ago. And we were going to do a cool little hotel and a neat building on the corner with a market and some restaurants and retail and those kinds of things. And that project ended up not moving forward. And so now we have the opportunity to do both corners. And so when we think about our public asset management sort of strategies, we've come a long way already in that process, at least in terms of what we were doing before and some of the things we were working through. But now we have almost a whole new council, and so since that RFP went out, and so we have the opportunity to just start fresh, basically, and that's where we are today. So as we're looking at that project, one of the questions, we have these 3 questions to consider, and I'm just going to propose that we just walk through them one by one. And I have a slide for each question that drills down into some of those other considerations, so we can pull those up. And we'll just kind of talk about those priorities, because really setting the priorities, the overall priorities for the project, is going to then end up guiding our uses that we choose for that, and who we choose for a partner, how we set up the financial arrangements, whether it's a joint venture or however that looks, right? So we need to really set that main priority first. So that's kind of where we're going to start with this first question of, let's start with just generating new revenue. So we've got these 3 questions. Is generating new revenue the primary priority? Is accommodating the needs of and otherwise achieving positive outcomes for the community around that and broader community as a whole? And is alignment with and facilitation of existing development plans the priority? So we can start with these 3. We can set other priorities. These are just questions to get us really thinking about this. We're not going to answer them all tonight. There's no one right answer, and every single project is going to be different. And so that's why drilling it down and starting with at least this project, which is probably the best one I think we can start with, honestly. Like, it's right in the core of our downtown. It's 2 different corners. There's so much opportunity. It's in an opportunity zone. Half of it is in the community development area for downtown. That's the northeast corner where the Bicycle Collective and Inn and St. George buildings are. And so there are all these different aspects that we get to consider, right? And yes, so the community development area, the downtown community development area, it's split. This property splits it. So the property to the northeast is in the CDA. The property to the northwest is not. So 100 West is the dividing line right there. And then all of it is in an opportunity zone.
And so to clarify for those who may not be aware, having that property in the CDA means that it's eligible for the generation and collection of tax increment financing as an additional tool at our disposal.
Thank you. And that downtown CDA has its own specifics of how that increment can be used and how it can be applied. So infrastructure would be one way to look at that. We could reinvest it into infrastructure for that piece. So then again, as we look at going forward, is it all one big project? Is it 2 different projects? Same developer, different developers? We have all kinds of things to consider with this one. The timeline that we're looking at with this, as Shalene said, we're hoping to have, the Gardner Institute is hoping to do this, wrap up kind of their study and their demonstration project information gathering by May. And so we would like to have an RFP or RFI or however, whatever process we decide to do, we'd like to have that out by the end of April. So it's a pretty quick timeline. We may not get there, but it's great to have that sort of goal out there to say, ooh, here's some things we really need to generate. And we'll answer a lot of these questions that we're talking about tonight as we move through that process and get that document created. Yeah.
So just to clarify, they'll be wrapping up their process in May. We need to have RFP before then, because how do those correlate? Just trying to see how they correlate.
So we don't have to have our RFP before then. The more information, the farther along we've moved in this process, the more information we'll be able to share with that study and help kind of have it be a part of the outcomes that they find as they're doing that study. So Shalene, how many demonstration projects are a part of the Gardner study?
There's about 9 or 10, and they're all, as I glossed over that slide, but they're all very different in terms of where they're located, the size of the project, the needs of the community, and things like that. One thing I will say too about that study, and one of the reasons we wanted to do it, besides that, the ones I mentioned, we are assuming that there will be legislative intentions going forward about how public asset development is incentivized and some of the things that are required. We also are assuming, and we're seeing already, that there's a range of interests from the private sector in helping these projects work financially and otherwise. And so as far as you can get along will help inform the audience for that study, including about what you might need from the state or from the private sector or the philanthropic sector. But as far as you get in that process, that will also be helpful for the study as well. We want to know, as for that study, what you're encountering, what questions you have, what you're thinking about, and what your preferences are for your community as you encounter some of that process.
Does that help answer your question, Greg? So part of the reason I like the idea of connecting in with the study is because it gives us sort of a framework to work through the process that's a little bit more formal than maybe we would have done otherwise, at least for the way I think about it. And then it's also, even though we don't have to meet that timeline, understanding that if we can, like, what barriers are we identifying, as we try to make these decisions? What are the really strong considerations for our community that you care about, that you want to see infused into this? Those are all going to be pieces of data that then can help inform the study and then come back and help us make better decisions going forward about how we move through this process in the future. Okay, any other questions?
I have one, Charlene. Because this piece of land, like you say, is in the core and it's so vital, would it make sense for us to, have a few other people consult on this? Do we want to hire some other development professionals? I don't know what that looks like, but I'm just curious if it would make sense to have a few people who have done this kind of thing in successful downtowns chime in.
So that's a great question, Danielle. Some of the things we've talked about are one great thing about it is Shalene brings that expertise to the team. She's kind of a consultant on loan, if you will. So she's worked with Salt Lake County, Salt Lake City, a lot of private donors. She worked on homelessness issues and all kinds of different things. And so she sort of brings that expertise in to help us do that. We also have talked about internally creating sort of a task force specifically for this project so that we can have a small group internally and then external stakeholders if we need to pull them in to help us move things forward quicker. And then with the downtown area plan going on right now as well, pulling information in from those stakeholder groups as you as a council wish to do that to help inform this process is also another great part of the timing of this. And again, the reason why we may not have the RFP out by that time, but it just gives us something to shoot for. And, again, the farther we can work through this process, the more information, the more data we'll have to be able to make better decisions. So that's
Shanae, may I say something about that too?
Yes.
Just to underscore that too, one of the things that we want to offer to communities is some facilitation, which I can provide going forward. And part of that is understanding what it is that you might need to make this project go forward, including who and what types of expertise you might want around the table as you think about it. So I think that's included in some of the questions that we had posed today, but we want to help you make it work. And if that kind of expertise around the table is something that you identify that you need, we want to bring that to you.
Great. Thank you. So my goal today is to come out of here with us just having launched this discussion and just have an open discussion about what are some of the priorities, what really matters, so we can then take that information back and package it and start moving it through the process. So, starting with those priorities is a big part of it, because even if we just look at these 3 questions, I can look at this and say, yeah, all 3 of those are priorities. But if we don't know how they're prioritized even, and then the subcategories of them, it's going to be harder for us to identify the uses and the things that we want to see there. So we can have the conversation around, generating revenue and accommodating the needs of the community, and we can start to identify what some of those things might be. Or we can start talking about some of the different uses that you would like to see. That's usually those can help us think about these things. So I'll give you an example. When I look at this and say, is generating new revenue the primary priority for the project? I love that idea, because I am always looking for new revenue streams, and how do we, to a lot of the points you've been making lately, Danielle, how do we help fund all the maintenance of all of the things that we have to do as a city? How do we start to really think about this? And so starting to look at our assets and the way that we manage our assets in terms of them being revenue generating for the city going forward, that opens up a whole new area of things that we can do to invest back in the community. So I love that idea. I had not been thinking about this project in those terms until I talked to Shalene and saw the public asset management presentation that she did for the league. And that's why I called her up and said, hey, tell me more about this and how does this work? So we can we just start with that question and let's talk about that. Like, how does that feel? How does that feel to you? We know we want it to impact the community and be, priority 2 is really, or number 2, I won't call it, number 2 is really important. We know we want it to be super important for our community. It's core to our downtown. But what about that revenue generation piece? How does that sit with you? What came up as you were thinking about that question over the last week?
Do you want to go first, Greg?
I think it's okay. We've seen communities that have done revenue shares on certain things. So we have the ground, we own it free and clear. If we find a developer that wants to work with us on that and have revenue share and be our partner, I think we wouldn't have a problem finding that. Let the developer maybe manage the project, but we have a vested interest in it. And I think that works. So if we just want to stick to that one question, I feel good about it.
Mm-hmm. Everything that I've studied about the downtowns that are successful and that really thrive, especially over time, that don't have their moment in time and then they are no longer, are the ones who maintain a feel, right? But because they maintain that feel, they are the number one generator of revenue for the city. If you look at it per square foot, even if the prices to get in those square feet are low, they generate by far more money than any other space in the city. And so in my mind, yes, we want it to be our number one generating space of revenue, but to reach that goal, I think what we want it to do is feel right. So we want it, whenever people say things to me about our downtown, whether they've been here forever or they've just come, they always comment on the emotion, right, that comes to them about being in our downtown. So if people feel comfortable and they feel happy and they love being in our downtown, so for me, even though generating the revenue is probably our number one outcome, in my mind, our number one goal is creating that comfort level where we, over time, maintain that feel that makes people want to come down and spend money.
I want to piggyback on that if that's okay.
Yeah.
That just goes into the questions, 1, 2, and 3. I agree wholeheartedly with what Councilman Larkin's saying. Currently we have no problem getting people right off the freeway on the exit of, and getting over into Red Rock Commons and that area. I want to see people coming downtown. And I think this is the perfect opportunity to revitalize that area. It can tie into Ancestor Square if we want it to. And also we have the parade grounds as well, which, a lot of people go there and then it's where do you go from there? There's a couple things on Main Street. But if we can really pull this in and tie it all together, I think this is crucial. So I think number 2, just like Danielle said, it's crucial to do this one right. And I think it needs to be a gathering place for residents of the community and also tourists of the community as well.
I'll just add, today we had our art commission meeting this morning, and our new commissioner, whose name is Barry Scharf, I believe, he is an artist and he's lived in St. George for 4 years, and he brought up something that was super interesting to me. He said, for 4 years I've wanted to say this to city, so I'm just going to bring it up here. And he said, when I first came here, I drove on I-15 and it just goes through your city. And he said there was nothing on I-15 that made me say, there's a downtown over here that is an art district and a historic district, and you should come to this space. He goes, I-15 just felt to me like I should just keep going. And he said, of course I stopped because I'd been told to stop, but I thought his point was really great and valid, that the mayor says, it's easy for us to get people off. Did you just say that, or am I just hearing things? Somebody just said.
No, I didn't say anything.
Charlene,
so you're hearing voices. In your
someone
head.
just
Greg
said. Greg, I'm sorry, Greg. Greg just said that we have no problem getting people off the freeway into Red Rock Commons because they see it. But how do we get people going through that corridor to know that our crown jewel is down here?
Okay. Great. So what I'm hearing right now is that 2 is almost this accommodating the needs and kind of achieving these positive outcomes is the overall goal. But in order to do that, for this particular project at least, number 1 can maybe be the priority that we're saying, if we do the revenue generation, we're going to be able to accomplish, making sure that it's driven by this main priority of accommodating. So flipping those basically is what I'm saying. Right now is kind of what I'm hearing. Almost equal.
Yeah, if we can make money off it, great, and let's do it. But I think priority number 1 is getting the space right.
Yeah. Okay. So, okay, great. It's getting the space right. Perfect. All right. So,
I think also we need to take a step back and and talk about why the revenue generation is important, or we go down the slippery slope of us taking the position or taking the spot of the private sector. So I think we could get some pushback from there, unless similar to like the RAP tax, we have defined goals of what the revenue generation is going to accomplish for the public. Yeah. If it's just so we can expand some other spending, what is that for, and what will happen? Did I get gonged? Time's up. No, I'm teasing.
Greg's microphone.
That's my concern when I look at revenue generation. In the past, we've always said asset for an asset. We've kind of taken one asset, and when we've moved out of that asset, we've usually gained some kind of income that we can then take on another project, whether it be taking an older home downtown that needed to be gone and then selling that lot, and we've improved those areas, similar to what we kind of maybe are doing at Tech Ridge, where we're not really revenue sharing, but we introduced a concept and then let it go, and then that money will do something else. We've got to continue to avoid the trap of using one-time money for ongoing costs, and I think that's been a philosophy that we've always followed. Now, whether that changes or not is up for discussion, but the revenue generation part, while it seems great, I would say 2 is the priority, and then we really need to be careful and be well-defined on what number 1 is, and how we approach that from the standpoint of, are we just expanding government, or do we have a clear-cut goal for that? Now, it works really good, like the switch point model. I mean, we're with the thrift stores, the doggy daycare, we're able to offset the costs of running that, and so there's some wisdom in that. But again, as a government entity, my thought is we need to really take a hard look at that and make sure we have defined parameters for that income generation.
And new revenue, couldn't we also consider maybe new revenue as new sales tax by whatever's going in there?
Yep, exactly. So that micro enterprise kind of example is a great way to look at the new revenue piece, right? It's like, what are the components of the new revenue? Mm-hmm. And what does that look like? And then how do we use that to support those longer, those other goals? Exactly.
Because we did get a lot of flack when we purchased the inn right there, and we knew what we were doing it for, that if we didn't, somebody would come in and just buy it, and it would stay like it is forever and ever and ever. And now that we own it, we can put an RFP down there, put an RFP out, and hopefully get what we want and tear that down and never have to see it again, or the old Trafalgar.
Right. Great. So what else? Bardell, Brian, what are you thinking?
Well, I was just going to say, I think if we get number 2 right, number 1 becomes a byproduct of getting number 2 correct. I think the revenue will be there, and I do I do agree with Councilmember Hughes in terms of, it'd be nice if we clearly defined how that revenue sharing was going to benefit the citizens of St. George.
Absolutely. Great. So that will definitely be part of this process. And I feel like we can't really move forward unless we have that really clear cut, which is another benefit of having Shalene's help to walk through this, because she's helped a few other organizations answer exactly these questions. Okay, now we know some of these higher goals. Now we have to drill down. And some of those sub-questions, I guess, are some of those, if we want to move into those really quick in consideration of time, we can do that.
Charlene, I have one other thing really quick.
Yes.
The other thing I would love for us to look at is architecture. Because I feel like one huge mistake we can make is the idea that shiny and new is better. And I just think that's a huge fallacy, and it could really change the character of our downtown. And even things like the Trafalgar and the old hotel, while they are run down and they're in really bad shape, and we probably couldn't accurately preserve them, you know, in a really great way, why not look at the architecture that was used there and fashion something after that, you know, like kind of remembering that space and when it was created. I just think that that is what helps create character, and if we can get good advice on that so that we don't let go of these different architectural styles and just have everything be somebody's, you know, brand new 2021 idea, then I think we're going to do a better job of maintaining character down there.
When we had our first RFP on this, the RFP we chose stuck with that
Did they?
character. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, and that goes into, you know, the uses and how do we accomplish that long-term outcome of having it be the best fit and the, you know, serving the needs of the community the best way. And as we as we move through this, we're absolutely going to have to look at those things. And, you know, part of the RFP process will be to define some of those pieces, like what kind of things are we looking for? Yes, uses, but also the feel. You know, how do we want it to feel? Do we want a cool, kind of hip, downtown retro vibe, or do we want a historical pioneer tribute? You know, I mean, there are going to be a lot of things that we have to think through as we're writing that RFP and putting that information out, so that we can be really broad or we can be really detailed depending on how much we want to guide that, the responses we get from it, I guess.
So Charlene, that makes me question the RFP process. A lot of times that process and the proposals put forth may be what generates the idea.
Exactly.
So, you know, kind of cart before the horse. Do we really look for ideas first and then try to come back to the drawing board, or are we saying this is what we want? I mean, there's kind of a catch-22 there.
So we're trying to find the balance. So we want to be able to dial in enough of what the council wishes to see there and what you believe the community wants and all of that. So what do we want that area to be? But then how do we write the RFP so that we get as much creativity and thoughtful proposals back? I mean, if we already know exactly what we want, we're just going to design it ourselves, then what's the point of doing an RFP? That's kind of how I would look at it. So there, obviously, Jimmy, we can't be too, you know, so detailed that it kills the creativity, because there's so much interest. We have a list of, I think I have 6 or 7 people already on the list that want to know when the RFP is released. Like, people are really excited about that place, and those ideas are going to help us inform, you know, those decisions too. But if we don't understand some of these key goals, then we'll miss the boat in the RFP and we won't get what we really want with the project in the end, or we'll have to start it over or whatever. I mean, it's not, you know, we can drag it on as long as we want. Okay, are you ready to talk? Do you want to talk a little bit more detail of some of these questions? Are we, you know, do we need to stand up and take a stretch?
I have a question that is, so right now, the car dealership is leasing from us, I assume.
Yes.
How much time are we going to give them?
So where we are right now with them is the lease on Premier, which is 116 West and 148 West St. George Boulevard, goes through September 30th of this year, and then it goes month to month. That's not going to work for them, and so they're looking for additional space. They're just going to start looking for space now because they know it might take quite a long time to move, and Ron Kaplan is very dedicated to his employees, and it's pretty cool. So we've been having a lot of conversations about that. If this process looks like we can extend their lease, you know, not month to month, but a longer period of time in a reasonable time frame, then we would certainly look at doing that. We would like to have them there as long as possible. We don't want the property to sit empty for a long period of time. And then Oaks Auto, we are in the process of doing a lease extension, negotiating a lease extension with them for right now as well. That would go through September 30th is our goal, so that they're aligned. Those 2 leases are aligned, and then we would try to keep them at the same time frame, realizing that they have businesses to run and they may find other They might move out before, we're totally ready to redevelop.
But they know their leases are up in September, but month to month. But if there is a whole lot of interest in an RFP on these properties, then I'm assuming once we put the RFP out there, it won't be long before somebody's coming in and saying, let's go to town.
Yeah, I think the market would like to move on it sooner rather than later. So,
Charlene, can I make one quick comment on the cart before the horse question? I think
Yes.
it's so good. Yeah. In the experiences that we've seen, it is how you're thinking about your answers to that revenue question that really can kind of make or break or slow down or accelerate the RFP process, and also is the primary question that kind of shapes the direction of the responses that you might get. So understanding within that, for that RFP, how you prioritize new revenue generation for the city. I think the comments that have been made are absolutely spot on. If revenue generation is a top priority, that's going to affect everything from how your developing partner, what partnership structure you have, to how they think about the project as a whole. And so when that revenue generation piece is a top priority, we also want to help folks think about exactly what was raised, what's the proper balance between the private sector and the public sector, and revenue sharing. So the cart before the horse question is really, really important. I think the revenue one is really, really important to think about for the RFP in particular.
thanks, Shalene. All right, so you'll have these questions, and we can continue to talk about sort of this as we go through, and form maybe that task force and kind of move things forward. I would like to spend just a little bit of time. I just want to ask, is there any one of these sort of bullet points under this generating revenue question that any of you would like to dig into a little bit more? So I'm kind of interested in also spending at least 5 or 7 minutes on that number 2. Like, what are some of those uses and some of those ideas? Because I think that's going to help us inform the first question about revenue generation. Is anything? Should we move on? Okay, let's talk about this one. So let's look at accommodating the needs of and otherwise achieving positive outcomes for the community. So Danielle's brought up architecture and how the space feels. We've talked a little bit about some of the uses that have been identified in the past for that space. Now we have we have more than double what we started with in terms of the 2 corners. What are some of the things that you would like to see there? Let's just open that up a little bit, and we don't have to go into a lot of detail. Again, this is just sort of early stage information, but it'll really help guide how we lay out the rest of the process.
I know I would love to see, as much ground floor commercial as possible. And I'd love to see small space commercial. We have so much commercial downtown that just nobody can afford to get into. Seeing spaces that small shops could actually figure out how to make it pencil, things that are creative and small. So kind of generating a good space downtown for creative opportunities. I'd love to see that. And because this is so close to the core, I know one of our big objectives is affordable housing, but I don't know if that's our primary goal in this particular space. I just don't know if there's room for that right there, or if there's maybe other spaces even just a block or 2 away that would work better. I don't know what the rest of the council thinks, but I'm just thinking that this is so close to that central core that it almost seems like, in my mind, the commercial aspect of it is probably the retail, is probably like the biggest deal, that we get the retail right, so that people are down there. And if they have to walk in a few blocks from housing, that we figure out that just makes more sense in my mind.
And I loved on the RFP we chose before that there was like a hometowns, a small market type of store,
That'd be really nice.
you know. And they mentioned, and I haven't been to, what was the one they talked
I
about?
think they said fries. It was fries.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, I would like to see that downtown too.
So some kind of retail, food-based retail as a market versus or in addition to some kind of restaurant kind of vibe. Okay. Let me ask you this. When we think about downtown culture and the fact that this is, right next to town square, we have all these events that come into town and are centered right there. One of the things that we talk about a lot of the times is what about some of our micro entrepreneurs and some of that entrepreneurial culture? We have lots of small business owners. What are some of the barriers to helping them kind of get to where they are, to your point, Danielle, about the cost of, renting and things like that? What about these, like a foodie culture, a music culture, what kind of things, art culture, like are there things like that you are interested in seeing downtown as a space help generate that we maybe want to take into account as we're thinking about the uses and the architecture and the feel of this particular development? I don't know, I'm just asking.
Go ahead, Bardo.
I was going to say, I think there's a number of models out there that we can look at. I'm thinking of old San Diego, where they actually will bus people into that just for that environment, just to spend time. Sedona, Brian was just in San Antonio and along the Riverwalk. I mean, I think there are a number of models that we can kind of cherry pick and get the best of what we think will be right. I know from in a prior life when I managed shopping malls, those retailers benefited from the theaters. So if St. George Musical Theater or some of these other types of events are downtown, then that commercial part of it benefits from that while they're waiting for the show to start or after the show or whatever the case may be. So I like the commercial concept personally, and I don't see the housing component necessarily for what we're talking about. I really think that the commercial is the direction I'd like to see us go towards.
Well, and I also think, like with City View, we were hoping we'd get a lot more commercial on the bottom, and that didn't pan out. But this is just right across the street where we could get it,
And I guess I should clarify, I think there could be a housing element. I'm not sure what that looks like, I think if we prioritize the retail, at least on the ground floor, then I think, there could be a housing element above it. But like the mayor says, I think that we want to make sure that retail isn't an afterthought.
I think that we've we've really looked at our housing downtown. We've done 2 very large projects in that area. I think this is an opportunity for commercial there. I think with the parking issues that we have and other concerns, I think that this space should be dedicated to a commercial use that facilitates gathering and is something unique to St. George. This will be a bad example, but take the All Abilities Park. When you go there, it's like you're going to Disneyland, and everybody goes there all day long, right? And it's so unique.
It's awesome.
And so I'd love to see us try to create something in a commercial aspect that's unique there, that can tie into the rest of downtown, that gets people downtown. Hey, there's this. Let's go downtown for that.
Okay.
And I agree with Greg. I'd like to see all of it, most commercial. Yeah.
So that brings up another question, probably the last one we have time for tonight, just to think about is scale. When we did the RFP the last time, we had everything from a 2-story hotel and a 2-story building on the corner, which is kind of the one that the council loved at the time, to a, I don't even know, 5-story massive apartment building that took up the entire parcel. So in terms of scale, I will put it out there based on previous conversations that we definitely want it to fit with the neighborhood is what I've heard from each of you individually at some point in time, at least, is, it needs to fit with the neighborhood. We have historic houses just to the north. We have Ancestor Square. We now have the Marriott and Avenir and City View, you know, right across the street. So there's that. Is there anything in particular that anything else that we need to be thinking about in terms of scale or open space around that development, or rooftop space or something, you know, in terms of that?
I think I was in Ancestor Square today, and Ancestor Square to me is still just iconic. Like, it's really such a great design that they chose. People just are really drawn to that space. But you notice, like, where are they interacting? They're interacting in the lower portions of it. And the upper portions have really struggled to survive over the years. I think, you know, with time, I think it will thrive because it'll be, you know, the only space left and somebody will do something with it. But people have done things and they just can't get people to go up. So as far as our interacting spaces, in my mind, it almost has to be those first 2 stories where people are willing to, you know, and they feel like they're still interacting within those spaces. You get higher than that and you feel disconnected from the rest.
I'd say, just to answer this question, as much open space as we can get on that 3.5 acres for gathering, so it doesn't feel like you're clogged in there, you know, it doesn't feel like it's conducive to coming and being part of. I know that's hard. The other comment I'd have is picking our developer is very important. I think we all realize that, because we want to make sure that, you know, some of the reasons why spaces aren't getting filled in certain locations is because rates are above market rate and things like that. So if we lose control of that, and that could affect us as well. So that comes back to city involvement, and, you know, it's just development, picking the right developer and making sure the pricing's right and things like that too.
Okay, great. So in terms of scale, I'm hearing, you know, not super high, first two floors at least, 2 levels, really that community interactive, retail, commercial, maybe some housing component above that, but we don't want it to be like hovering over the rest of the neighborhood.
And the rooftop you were talking about would be awesome.
The views right there, I mean, it really is. Think about the views from the Marriott, from the Avenir's upper balconies and stuff. Like, there's a really huge opportunity to open up our downtown
and even
outdoor
just
space.
That little rooftop they just did out in Little Valley on that Crimson Cafe. It's so great. I mean, it just turned it from just a little neighborhood cafe into, you know, a great gathering space.
Great. All right. Well, that's about all I had. I mean, we went through all the questions I had. I'm going to stop sharing now so we can pull it through. Anything else that you want to share that I need to be thinking about as we move forward? We're going to be moving kind of quick.
As we think about this, we can email you our ideas or send you a picture. Or, yeah.
Please do. And I'll share with you the folder that we have for kind of downtown ideas and different inspiring things that we've just sort of been collecting anyway over the last couple of years. Okay?
You know, if it's wildly successful, it also brings parking concerns, so we got to make sure we factor that into the discussion.
Absolutely.
So I think
great point.
That's the thought is, I don't know if housing should be a component of this. I think that's kind of what came out of this a little bit. I don't know if housing should be, just because of parking concerns, and we have high density housing there. I think this should be focused on commercial with open space. The other thing I would want to make a mention of is, if we move quickly to an RFP, that's great, but when the RFP is out there, let's let it sit out there as long as we want. This is our land. Let's make sure we get the right thing. So if it takes, if we hit it day 1 and we got the right thing, great, let's go for it. If we don't, and it takes a year, let's take a year, but let's get it right.
Okay. All right. Great.
That's what I like. I mean, let's see there's a lot of people with some great ideas out there. It might be a mix of a couple ideas that we get that somebody finally gets. Or we might have to send out a new RFP saying, hey, we like this and this component. Is someone interested in making those work together?
Okay. Great. So we want to make sure we get it right.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Definitely.
Do you have anything else, Adam?
No, that's great feedback.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Shalene, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks, Council.
Let's get like a 2-minute break in before we start our regular meeting. Okay, we're going to get started. We had a work meeting just prior to this meeting, so we've already had our invocation and our and the Pledge of Allegiance. Adam, changes to the agenda.
We have two changes. They're fairly straightforward. Item number 11 has been removed from the agenda. That's a procedural issue. What we need to do is at our next regular meeting, we'll review the PDC for this development, and then we'll follow that with the preliminary plat. So we want to hold off on the preliminary plats tonight. So item 11 comes off, and then because item 13 is related to item number 8, we're just going to do those back to back if that's okay. We'll do 8, go straight to 13, and come back to 9. Other than that, I think everything is as presented in the agenda.
Okay. So our first item is comments from the public, and I'll just quickly go over the rules. You have to be a resident of St. George. You'll be given 3 minutes to speak. Please be courteous and show respect, and comments can't be related to any pending issues on the agenda or likely on a future agenda. So we'll start with Doreen Gertsch. Topic is another community pool needed in town.
Hello, it's me again. Do I need to say my address?
Please.
Okay, 2725 East, 1170 South Circle in St. George. But first of all, I just want to say really quick that I really admire and respect you guys for being here. Like, leadership positions is not like, it's a hard job, and I really admire you guys for doing this. But I just want to come back. I think last time I came, I talked about pools and like the competitive aspect of it, but actually I think that I wasn't very clear of like, I care more about the high school and how it affects the high schoolers, not necessarily, I mean, club is one thing in town, like all club sports, there's always going to be issues with club against club and things that aren't fair in clubs, but all I really care about is our high schoolers and just kids in general. I have kids from 4 to 14, so any kids in the area, that's what my main concern is. And so I just want to make that clear that that's all I care about. I'm just a mom. I don't represent any club team, and I just am trying to make it a better situation for our kids in this area. I think St. George historically has been like a retirement, like, because I grew up in Springville just north of here, and it was always like, oh, you go retire in St. George. But now it's like all the families want to come down here, and just we're swarmed with families everywhere, right? And it's great. So I'm just really hoping that another pool in this area would be amazing, because right now in the high school, they're allowing anybody to be on the high school swim team, but you're going to be cut in baseball and football and volleyball, basketball, everywhere where there's lots of access to courts, and tennis as well. But in swim, where there's very limited access, anybody can swim. So we're packing up the one city pool with as many high schoolers and as many general public people as possible, but we're not like limiting the amount of people. And also I've been talking with Shane and Cody with the city, and they've been amazing and to work with. And I actually also met with Craig Hammer and also Mike Winslow, the athletic director at Crimson. Also I've been emailing the athletic director at Desert Hills. And also I've even called and talked to Tamber, who's the DSU head coach of the swim over there. So I've been trying to like work whatever aspect possible to like make it so that the swimmers in this area have more access to lanes, or just anyway. Like, I think even St. George Rec Center, I think the entire rec center is like the size of just the pool area at the Washington Community Center. And so I think we can do a little bit better for our town. I think a lot of families are going to be here, and so I'm hoping that we'll be emphasizing a lot on, like, I know arts is really important in St. George, but I think that we need to be well balanced, and now that there's more families in the area, and making sure that we're offering extracurricular leisure activities that will keep the kids busy, because I think that's one of the most important things is, like, if you have a bunch of arts around, it's beautiful. I super appreciate it. But if you don't keep the kids busy, what are they going to do to those arts? They're probably going to vandalize it. And so if they don't have anything else to do, if they have a swimming pool to go into, or if they have another sports team that they can be part of, then it's keeping the kids busy and giving them something to do on the weekends, so that they have good things to participate in instead of just stuff to wander around to, which wandering's good and spending time with your friends. But anyway, I just want to put that out there again for you guys to think about. And I don't know, the people that I've met with throughout the city, it's basically like good luck. There's pretty much not a chance in France that you're going to get a pool. But I'm like, I'm going to keep trying. And so I think it'd be really good for this area. I know that we have Shack over there, Sand Hollow, but that's out where everyone's super old out there, whereas out here is where all the families are, and someday that'll maybe circulate to be families out there, but really a lot of it is out in the Washington Fields area, and things are great for them on that side. I guess Washington would be a great place for families to move in. That's where they're doing because they have access to the community pool and lots of things over there. So, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. Just your time, but we appreciate you coming back.
Yeah.
Appreciate you working with Shane and Cody, talking to them.
Yeah.
And keep at the school district.
Yeah. Yeah, this is an uphill battle. I know it. So, anyway, I appreciate your guys' time.
Thank you. And then the other one I have is from Lee Scott on filling city council seat.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Council. My name is Lee Scott. I'm a longtime resident of St. George. Graduated as an Eagle, a Woodward Eagle, a Flyer, a Rebel, and then an Aggie. Thank you for giving me just a couple of minutes. There is a vacancy on the St. George City Council that needs to be filled. Names are submitted by outstanding members of the community. The list is narrowed to 3 individuals, the best of the best. After much discussion and vote taking, no individual is a clear choice. It is decided that a coin flip will decide the winner. After several coin flips are taken, a winner emerges. Happy day. The matter is settled. Congratulations are given. But wait. The wrong individual has won. This can't be. With the previous winner not present, and after coming up with a Save Our Face plan, it is decided to call Salt Lake. As we know, that Salt Lake has all the answers. Doesn't the city have any autonomy in this matter? As the discussion ensues with Salt Lake, with lots of yeses, nos, and maybes, a technical foul is called. We know when a technical foul is called, you get another shot. After much politicking and intimidation, a vote is taken. And voila, a new individual is chosen. Is this the chosen one? Yes, this will do. Integrity is a wonderful word. Paragraphs can be written explaining it and its extraordinary meaning. When individuals gain a little power, they may lose their integrity. I believe that this happened in this case. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Council, before we go to the consent calendar, we're going to let Trevor introduce our new purchasing manager. It was like purchasing person? That wasn't right.
Yeah, so when I'm happy to introduce you to Courtney McRae. Courtney comes from California. She's worked down there with a city down there in California and also a school district. Comes with a lot of great credentials. She's been with us for a little over a week and a half, right? Yep. She's one of those that is building a new home here. Her parents and family live in Virgin area, so she's staying with them temporary until she gets her house built. But I just wanted to introduce her to the mayor and the council. She has an item, the first consent item on the agenda, and anyway, you probably won't have any questions about it, but if you have questions in now or in the future, I wanted you to be introduced to Courtney. And she will be sometimes presenting things before the council in the future, so anyway.
Welcome, Courtney.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
You're up, Adam.
All right, just want to make sure we didn't have any other public comment. So that takes us to the consent calendar. We've got 8 items on our consent calendar this evening. These items, as a reminder, are administrative in nature. Staff have reviewed all of them. We've found that they comply with all of our regulations. Unless you'd like to pull any of these items off for individual discussion, or you have any questions, which we're happy to do, staff would recommend approval.
Questions?
Motion to approve. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Motion to approve consent calendar.
Second.
Motion by Jimmy, seconded by Danielle. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I'm not doing that anymore. Motion carries unanimously. Because I can't hear all of you, apparently. I'm losing my hearing. Item number 3.
Oh, Mayor, I'm going to recuse from this one. Do you want me to leave the room?
No, you just don't need to vote. You can stay in here.
Okay. This is a request to consider a conditional use permit to operate a vacation rental out of a designated landmark site located at 163 South Main. This is known as the J.J. Millen Home. This came before council in December to be designated as a landmark site. So it is located here. And then here are pictures of the front. There's the covered parking there. And that's it. There is review criteria for conditional uses for landmark sites. The applicant does propose to continue investing in the property as they rent it out.
Council, any questions on this one? Danielle's recusing herself because she lives right next door and knows the neighbors well.
So she doesn't want it? I'm teasing. I'm teasing.
You know those short-term rentals, she's one of the complainers.
You ready for a motion?
If you're ready, make one.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to we approve the conditional use permit for the short-term rental known as the J.J. Millen Home.
Second.
Motion by Jimmy, seconded by Brian. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Does it need to be called vacation rental or short-term rental okay?
As long as it's legal, short-term rental is fine.
Okay. I just noticed the wording I said was different than the wording on here. So
Motion carries unanimously.
Sorry.
I love that house, by the way.
Okay. The next is a request to consider a zone change from R110 to PDR on approximately 52.9 acres, PDC on approximately 39 acres, and R17 on approximately 36.38 acres, and open space on approximately 7.72 acres for a total of approximately 146 acres. So this is located along River Road, and Southern Parkway is down here to the south, and White Dome Drive bisects the project. So the 17 acres of open space that they're proposing is in addition to all of their rec and amenity spaces within the overall project. The general plan is MDR, HDR, and commercial. So here's an overview of each of their project areas. There's 11 different areas to consider, and then I'll group them by project type as we go along. So areas 1, 5, and 7 are all proposed as R17. So with these, they'd like to leave them as straight R17, not having the amenity with a PDR, and they would just come forward as a plat. So the next areas are PDR. So with these ones, we do have the elevations, conceptual site plan, and all that to review. So project area 2 is the first one. This is south of White Dome Drive. So this area is 66 attached townhome units. They're duplexes and fourplexes over about 8 acres of a density of 8.10. This one's in the MDR, and they do fall within that range. It will require 2 amenities of at least 13,200 square feet, and they do meet that. They are proposing a kids' playground equipment area and a sport court area. It will also require 2 parking stalls per unit, one of which must be covered, as well as guest parking of 1 space per 3. They are proposing 2-car garages for these units. 22 guest parking stalls are required and 22 are provided. So here is the elevation for the 4-plex units, front and rear, and your duplex units, and then their materials for this project. Okay, the next project area is Area 3. This is for White Trails phases 1 through 3. For this one, they are 79 detached single-family units over about 11.54 acres. This puts them at a density of 6.85 units per acre. It falls within the MDR range. This area has MDR and HDR as the general plan designation. This will also require 2 amenities over at least 15,800 square feet, and they are meeting that. They propose a kids' playground equipment area and a sport court area. This will require 2 stalls per unit, one of which must be covered, and guest parking at 1 per 3. The project proposes that each unit will have a 2-car garage, and then there are 27 guest parking stalls required and 27 provided. There are also detached garages on some of the units. So elevations, there's 4 different elevations to choose from in this area. There are the first 2, and the next 2, and then 4 different garage elevations there, and their materials board. Next PD area is Area
Shannon,
4.
just really quick. So the ones that have the detached garage, I didn't see a product. Maybe I just missed it. Do those have garages and then also a detached garage?
Yes,
Oh, in addition.
Mhm. So these will be additional back behind here. Okay, so Area 4, this is north of White Dome Drive. This area has 58 attached townhouse units. These are also duplex and 4-plex, but with a different design. This is over 4.86 acres for a density of 11.93 units an acre. This is general plan HDR, and they're falling in the MDR range. So this will require 2 amenities over the 11,600 square feet. They're proposing a kids' equipment area and a sport court area. This will require 2 parking stalls per unit, one of which must be covered, as well as guest parking of 1 per 3. They're proposing that each unit will have 2 reserved parking stalls, at least one of which will be covered, and then 60 guest stalls. They're exceeding the guest parking requirement here. And so here's the elevation for these ones. And then their materials board. So Area 6 is White Trails 4 through 6. So this is similar to the White Trails 1 through 3. It'll also have some of those detached garages in the same elevations. So for this area, it's 85 detached units over approximately 12.82 acres. So it's 6.63 dwelling units an acre. The general plan in this area is MDR. This also requires 2 amenities. They're meeting that requirement with a kids' playground equipment area and a social area. This will also need the 2 stalls per unit, one of which must be covered, and guest parking. They are proposing 2-car garages for each unit as well as the detached garages, and then 29 guest parking stalls are required, and they're providing 33. And then here's the first 2 elevations again, elevations 3 and 4, and then the 4 different elevations for the detached garages and materials board. Okay, so the next areas are project areas 8 and 9. For these, they're seeking PDR initial zone change. So we don't have the conceptual site plan or elevations yet. For this area, project area 8 will be this one here. They're proposing 110 units and probably 3-story apartments. And then area 9, 160 units and 4-story apartments. And those will come forward at a later date. Both of these are in HDR general plan areas. Next are areas 10 and 11. 10 is here north of White Dome, 11 is south of White Dome. So project area 10 is 5 acres. Project area 11 is 34. This is another PD initial, so we don't have the conceptual site plan or things yet, but we do have a use list for review. And then there's that summary table again for your reference. So staff's available, or the applicant is also here if you have any questions.
Any questions for the developer?
Jenna,
They're going to be affordable.
I noticed the letter from the Nature Conservancy, but it sounded like in the recommendation from the Planning Commission that was all covered, right?
Yes, and they are working with Elaine. They've
Okay.
talked with her.
And then on the use list, the Planning Commission, there was something about the city that needed to be added?
Adding public facilities.
Public facility, okay.
Council, if I could, a few months ago, or maybe not that long ago, you asked us to take a step back. You asked the developer to do a little bit more planning in this area. Does this meet your expectations? Is there additional information that you feel like you need to be able to make a decision?
I think, I really like it. I appreciate it. I really appreciate that the developer went back, and I like the mixed product. I don't know about the rest of the council, but I really appreciate the in-depth, detail.
There's a couple things I really like about this. It seems like the open space that's put in between the product is good. I like the open space that's there. I like the detached garage product that's on those. That's pretty interesting, so I like that use. In the PDR, since we can make comments on a PDR, one concern that I would have with it is I just have a concern. I've seen where we've done a lot of the those detached homes by each other, just where there's large sections of those, and sometimes it seems like that may not age as well as other areas. Just from that's a personal opinion. Again, just giving comments because of a PDR. So that's a concern that I would have. That was the concern that we had when the developer came. It was a different location before, but it was a lot of the same product with those detached, not townhouses, but homes in that medium density residential. So that's a concern. I don't have the answer other than maybe more of a mix in those, that there's different product there, so there's different types, but that just commenting. That's the comment.
Any other comments? Crickets? Crickets.
You want a motion, Mayor?
I'm ready for a motion if you want to make one.
I'll make a motion that we approve an ordinance changing the zone from R110 to PDR on approximately 52.9 acres, PDC on approximately 39 acres, R17 on approximately 36.38 acres, and open space on approximately 17.72 acres, for a total of approximately 146 acres generally located north of the Southern Parkway, east of River Road, south of the White Dome Nature Conservancy, and west of the existing White Sands and Sage Canyon subdivisions to be known as Southern Hills, including the use list as recommended by the Planning Commission. And anything else I need to add to that?
I don't think so.
Second.
Motion by Danielle, seconded by Brian. All in favor, starting with Vardell.
Aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Item number 5.
Mayor, Council, it's good to be here. Oh, wow. Oh, that's not it. Okay, item 5. Oh. Sorry. So item 5 is to consider approval of an ordinance amending the Stone Cliff Planned Development Residential PDR zone to be known as the Stone Cliff Clubhouse on approximately 2.83 acres located at 2241 East Cobalt Drive. You can see here the location, Cobalt there. So this is, as mentioned, the vicinity. Here we have Cobalt. The property, this actually shows the general plan map, which is low density residential. The zoning, as mentioned, is PDR. Here you can see the proposed building and amenities to go along with this new clubhouse. This darker gray area is parking that is currently there. They will be adding on to that parking there. So there's currently 26 stalls. They'll be adding 31 for a total of 57. And then here's just some elevations of the clubhouse and the materials. So that's all I have. If you have any questions, I'm happy to try and answer.
Any questions, council? Notice that their HOA voted on this and 67% were in favor, so. If you don't have any questions, I'll take a motion.
I make a motion to approve the ordinance amending the Stone Cliff Planned Development Residential PDR Zone to be known as Stone Cliff Clubhouse on approximately 2.83 acres located on 2241 East Cobalt Drive.
Second.
Motion by Brian. Was that you, Vardell? Yes. Seconded by Vardell. All in favor, starting with Danielle.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, so item 6 is to consider approval of an ordinance amending the Stone Cliff Planned Development Zone for a landscape maintenance facility to be known as the Stone Cliff Landscape Maintenance Facility on approximately 0.345 acres located at 2593 East Marble Drive. You can see here the location. Here's Marble Drive. And right there. And then here again, this is actually the general plan map for low density residential. And the zoning is PDR residential as mentioned. Here you can see the site proposal. Here's the maintenance facility. And then the surrounding landscaping and property. And here are some elevations of that proposed building. And the materials. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Any questions on this, council?
I remember from our discussion on this particular item that we did ask as far as there going to be chemicals on site or anything like that, and we received those assurances that anything that would be stored there would be consumable within days of having been located there. And it was on that same HOA survey that the residents all were in favor and realized the need, so they supported it as well.
Yeah.
With that, I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I recommend that we approve item number 6. Consider the approval of an ordinance amending the Stone Cliff Plan Development PD Zone for a landscape maintenance facility to be known as Stone Cliff Landscape Maintenance Facility on approximately .345 acres located at 2593 East Marble Drive.
Second.
Motion by Vardell, seconded by Gregg. All in favor, starting with Vardell.
Aye.
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 Motion carries.
Okay. So this next item, item number 7, is consider approval of an ordinance amending the Fields at Mall Drive Planned Development Commercial Zone, the PDC zone, for a car wash to be known as Quick Quack Washington Fields on approximately .96 acres located at 2780 East and Mall Drive. Here you can see the location here. Here's Mall Drive, 2780 East. Here is this current grocery store, and this is actually located on Lot 8 of the development. The zoning here is, as mentioned, PDC, and here you have the site plan. Here you can see the location of the entrance. They have 3 lanes going in, going through the car wash with the customer with the option to drive off or go in and use the vacuums. Here's some pictures of the elevations of some of the current Quick Quacks that are open around the state. And with that, I can try and answer any questions you might have, and the applicant is here.
Any questions?
Yeah, was there discussion by the Planning Commission about the exterior of this, the colors?
Mr. Curtis might correct me, but I don't recall very much discussion at all.
I do think that was discussed, and we were told, and the applicant is here, but we were told that's their signature. That is what they all look like.
Well, so I looked them up, and they have some others in Utah that don't look like that. So it would be awesome if they could share with us, some of the other ones up north, they've done like rock and made it look a little more muted, but.
We had that same discussion with Buffalo Wild Wings, nobody here remembers that, I guess. Maybe you do, Michelle.
Was their branding different, Jimmy,
Well,
than what you ended up with?
Yeah, you remember, you've been here forever. But their sign was very.
I'm super old, according to someone that.
Right, their sign was really bright, if I remember right.
And the strip,
right?
The yellow strip that they have.
Very similar.
That's right.
And there was a branding issue, but they did tone it down.
Yeah, and I have seen where these guys have toned it down also, and it just, in my opinion, with it being a PD, it looks a lot better. It kind of fits the environment and the landscape here better. But
does the applicant want to speak?
Am I allowed to, Mayor?
Yep.
I would love to.
Okay.
Thank you. Joseph Ernest. This was discussed with the Planning Commission, 2 Planning Commission members, and of course, I just to kind of refresh everyone's memories, that was with Planning Commission. So I didn't say all of our Quick Quacks have the green and yellow, but absolutely, without a doubt, the green and yellow is our prototypical marketing strategy, and we rely on, for our economics, a membership model, where if a customer is a member of a single car wash, they're a member of every car wash. And I think they come to rely on the continuity of the aesthetics and the elevation, that we actually really like it. 2 of the Planning Commission members said why they like the existing colors, which fortunately for us is exactly why we like them as a company. They said it's inviting and they like them. And we think the yellow is inviting and it's welcoming and it's fun. We don't think there's any harm or negativity to it. I would say, so you're aware, there was months of legwork to get these elevations approved and communication efforts with LINS and Suburban Land Reserve. We submitted all of our plans to the LINS and the Suburban Land Reserve, who's the developer, and they've approved them. That was, I know the Planning Commission considered that when they approved everything, and these elevations were considered with the colors and approved unanimously. If it is changed, I have to go back with LINS and Suburban Land Reserve and get something else approved. That's what the process would be for me if something changes. Now, I'm not above begging. I'm tall, but I'll beg. It's a big deal to the company to have it be our standard colors. And yes, there are some times where cities make us do something differently. Just so to answer that question.
Any more questions for the applicant?
No.
We're excited to come to St. George for what it's worth. We're stoked, so thank you.
Everyone wants to be here.
Yeah, right? Because it's warm. I just drove from north, and you don't want to be up there right now.
It is nice. Adam, Sean, we're just doing a zone change. Is it appropriate to bring up the recirculation system now or later when it comes back?
No, it would be appropriate to bring it up just to remind the applicant of that responsibility that they have. And this is a planned development, so obviously the colors are something you can consider. I will say this, we have a very good relationship with Associated Foods and LINS. And we have a very, very good relationship with SLR, PRI, and all of the three-letter LDS Church-related property entities. So I don't think that will be a problem as far as the color goes, if that's what the council chooses to do.
Okay. So if the council decides to make a motion, do we bring up that we want to make sure that you have a recirculation system and are using it in that motion, or just remind the applicant we're really concerned about that?
I think we absolutely want to be on record that our expectation is that the recirculation system is installed and that it is maintained in perpetuity as long as this facility is in operation. That is the city's expectation. We would exercise our right in the future to perform inspections if necessary and make sure that it were being used as designed. Where we are with our water resources right now, these are the types of things that we have to consider. To the recirculation system for your water.
Yeah, for the water.
I have a question for staff, if this is appropriate time for it. And you can tell me if it is or not. Just asking about the zoning. We're seeing a lot of new car washes come to St. George. It's very popular. Is a car wash currently a permitted use in zones, or is it a conditional use? Meaning, if there's that's the question.
So it is a permitted use in this zone. For this particular project, I would have to go look at the other zones, and maybe John could address that.
Okay.
So the other zones, it is a permitted with standard. And this is a PD, and so you are looking at this use. This is in the use table. Mm-hmm. However, you are looking at this use at this specific location.
So this is where it might be, as if this is appropriate to talk about now. If we go outside of this, as we go into general commercial zones throughout the city of St. George, it's currently a permitted use.
That's correct.
Is this something we might want to look at and make it a conditional use as the additional requests for car washes come in, just to make sure that they go in the appropriate places? And
I think there's a handful of ways we can handle it. We can do it as a CUP. We can also look at allowing it in PDs only. And so that way it'd be a PD, you come forward, you could look at it as part of the site plan and elevations, and it'd be part of that plan development process. Sean and city manager may comment, but that seems to be probably a safer approach rather than a conditional use permit.
I would agree with the PD option. On conditional use permits, the state law has narrowed it down so much that really if we list the conditions that are required for these and they can mitigate any of those, then we have to allow it. So we've pretty much tried to eliminate all of our conditional uses in our zones and just list the what's required for them to be approved. So I like John's suggestion of the PD if you were going to go that route.
If we decide to make that decision to go that route, how do we move forward with that?
Staff would initiate an amendment to the zoning ordinance with that, having that. We'd strike it out of all of the zones and put it as a PD. And so we would just initiate that if that was direction received by the city council.
Okay.
And there was also some issues with the sewer hookup.
Yeah, there are some issues.
I don't see our water people. I don't see Scott. I saw him earlier. Adam just said, hold on.
Depends on your flavor.
When you were reading the packet, did you read that they wear ties? All their staff has to wear ties? Even when it's 110?
Short sleeve shirts, Mayor. Short sleeve shirts.
Even these guys don't have to wear ties in the summer.
We cut ties off in the summertime. Where are we at? Motion?
No, we're waiting.
We're at the sewer issue, for what it's worth. We've had Suburban Land Reserves engineer and our own working with the city on that. We understand it's a condition, for what it's worth.
Yeah, sorry, that was a long run. Sorry.
Where'd you come from?
Deep in the bowels of the
Sewer?
basement. Yeah, from the sewer. So in talking with the wastewater department, what we'll do is, we'll require them to pump their effluent from the car wash, basically gravity feed the line out of the building, pump that, they'll come together and they'll drain out to the east, to the line that was extended in from Mall Drive for the lens. There was some talk about having them extend underneath the drainage channel. Staff's just not in support of that. We just don't feel like that's a better idea. We'd like to look at other alternatives. One of them we felt like that would work is if you pump the water from the car wash up into a manhole, bring the sewage from the restrooms and that, and tie it in, and they should be able to tie into that manhole there coming in from Mall Drive.
I want to give you oxygen.
I'd like to blame the COVID, but it's just me being out of shape. So that's kind of where we left it at. Instead of going underneath, we're going to ask them to pump it and gravity it out to that line coming in from Mall Drive to the lens.
Okay, so Mr. Guzman, if the council decides to move forward and make a motion on this, help us.
All right, so the issues, are you addressing the color issue too? Is that one of the items you wanted to address?
I do, and I have the pictures up on my computer. I don't know if we want everyone to look at them, but there's, a big difference in the muted colors as opposed to what we're seeing here. So, if everyone wants to see it.
Do you have a store in Alpine?
Pardon me?
You have a location in Alpine?
Is
This one right here, which location is that?
Is that where you think you're headed?
Yeah.
Council?
Well, I wouldn't say the rest of the council, but Danielle and I are kind of thinking along the same lines. This is very similar to what we did at Buffalo Wild Wings. It's the same concept, just a little muted color. Do you know what store that was?
Their sign though, right? Or did you change their entire elevation? Because that would change their whole elevation. That's different materials as well.
No, the color, that yellow color.
Yeah, that changes the color, it changes the metal, it changes the material. That changes the whole thing, in a sense. It's not just the yellow.
It's not just the yellow.
No, so that's green and yellow, and then you have CMU block on the bottom, and then home face on the top with stucco.
Yeah.
That's going to be.
This has the stacked rock, and it has the brown CMU.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, just so you're aware, that's what we go to if we can't work with the city to do what we like to do as a business to try and make money when the government asks us not to. Sounds like we're there, but that would be our default option, what we would like to do if that's where the council decides.
Mayor, are you looking for a motion?
Greg
Or
had
is
a
there
question.
more?
Question, if
Yeah.
we want to, if we want to talk about the PD, would that be something that could be included in the motion, or does that need to be a separate?
Talk about the PD.
So
as
if we
far as-
wanted, as we discussed this evening about,
Oh, that would just be direction to the staff.
Just direction to the
Yes,
staff at a
and-
different
And
rate.
John's made a note of it, so if that's what the council and mayor would like to do.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? So you mentioned color, Sean, and then the recirculation system has to be in place and in use and able to
Continuously
inspect.
maintained.
Continuously maintained. And this.
Tying the
Ti-
sewer into the manhole, east to the manhole, and not crossing Mall Drive. Those three items, I think. Were there any other items from the Planning Commission, John, that we need to include in?
Any of you, did y'all get that? Just
Danielle, you're making the motion. It sounds
Yeah,
like
I know
so
how
did
to.
you.
I know how to say as spoken by legal, so I got it. Mayor, I would like to make a motion that we recommend approval of an ordinance amending the fields at Mall Drive Plan Development Commercial Zone for a car wash to be known as Quick Quack Washington Fields on approximately 0.96 acres. And I would like to include in my motion everything that was the three items mentioned by legal. And then also, in regards to the PD, that we would like to see the muted colors and the stacked rock and the more Southwest style that was used on the Quick Quack Car Wash in Highland, Utah.
Motion by Danielle.
Second.
So a clarification on that, and when you say would like, you're saying
We
on the
do.
condition
Yes,
that
not
it
like.
has those?
Yes.
Okay, want to make it clear. So that's a condition, it has to be those colors, the rock, as shown on your Highland.
Mr. Guzman?
Yes.
May I make a suggestion?
It's up to the mayor.
Sure.
That the sewer connection complies with city staff, so that city engineers desire. Just because I don't know how far along the civil engineers have gone in researching connecting to the east. So maybe just that we default to whatever your city engineer wants.
Just to
was already in your
clarify, that
statement,
is,
wasn't it?
that is from our engineering staff, from our water department chair.
Director.
Director, yes. So it's from our city staff. That's what it will be. Your engineers will need to connect it as in this motion. That is what the city is going to require.
Understood. I'm concerned the CCNRs won't allow it, for what it's worth.
It'll be required by the city staff, so.
Okay.
I'm not aware of any CCNRs, by the way, that would prohibit the connection
I'll show you.
of,
I'm worried about it.
yeah. We can resolve that.
Great.
So motion by Danielle, seconded by Brian. All in favor, starting with Danielle.
Aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to do item number 8 and then go to item number 13.
All right. Number 8 is to consider approval of an ordinance amending the Desert Color Plan Development residential zone to allow a new neighborhood development to be known as Sage Haven, or Pod 6 Plat A, on approximately 69.72 acres, generally located east of I-15 south of Southern Parkway and south of Auburn Hills. Up to this point, everything you've seen in Desert Color has been basically Auburn Hills and Desert Color Resort. This is the next little pod or next little neighborhood. And you can see it outlined in blue on your screen. Zoning is PDR again. You got a mix of some residential and some civic open space, networking, trails, that kind of thing. So this is a look at both plats. Now, we're only looking at Plat A today for the zone change amendment, and for the preliminary plat as well. And I'll go over the plat here in just a second. So that's on your screen. It's this line. The line in red is the dividing line between Plat A and Plat B. So we're looking at the stuff on the left-hand side, the northwest side of the plat. Next time around, we'll look at Plat B, which is the stuff on the southeast corner. And then this here in the middle, that section will come in at a later date. That's not planned at this time with either Plat A or B, but that'll come in the future. With the zone change amendment, what we're primarily looking at is this this area. This is the area that will have the multifamily structures, most of which have been designed and you've seen in other developments, and I'll go over those. In fact, we looked at a bunch of them last week. But the ones that are yellow, that group will have yet to be designed, and it sounds like they're a few weeks out to having those fully designed. So those will come before you again in the future for another zone change amendment, PD amendment for those. That said, we did want to take a look at the plat as well with this design or with this application. So this is the plat. Again, we're looking at everything within this dashed line. So again, those that we were just looking at a second ago is up in this corner, and that's the multifamily portion of Sage Haven. And then this is close up of the various sheets of the plat. Again, the multifamily portion, and then the plat, the single family with the civic space, etc. There are 269 units associated with this plat, with Plat A, and again we'll go over Plat B next time. And this is the southern portion of Plat A. So that's the request. Let's look at the architecture here. These are the Boulevard townhomes. Again, these are some of the structures that you saw last time. They will use again. And then the Boulevard townhomes, Territorial Ranch. The Muse townhomes, these are constructed. There are quite a few of the Muse constructed in Auburn Hills already. And I believe in Desert Color Resort there are some Muse as well. So they are proposing these. And then these are the materials that would be used on the Muse and on the Muse. And again, those others that I mentioned will come forward to you at a later date, once they're fully designed. So that's the request. Because we're looking at the zone change amendment and the preliminary plat, there would need to be two
separate motions.
Yeah, two motions on these. So if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions for Dan or Bob? Or Bob, you want to just be an honorary council person? You're here every week, till this is all done, huh?
Bob, are you guys just selling stuff faster than you can even build it?
You know what? It's been going fantastic.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody had a chance to visit the parade and
Yeah,
kind
I
of check
did.
out a few things.
Looked really good.
Yeah, we feel really good about it, and we feel like we're charging forward with some good intent and trying to really set the bar Desert Color style, if you will, and super excited to open up Sage Haven, which is basically a very similar product and mix to Auburn Hills, just directly south. overall, it'll be very similar in physical size and densities, and it's almost a twinner. We've just tweaked the product mix a little bit. There's a little less overall attached product in this overall pod, and we're looking at pod A, which is a big chunk of this, and then there'll be a pod B that's just right behind it. Like I've already submitted and will be here in a week or two. And the only reason that I'm splitting these up into these pods is trying to give it a little bit more, a little bit smaller size so everybody can get their arms around them as we move through the approval process. And so any questions? But this is, you guys have seen this before, but happy to talk it out with you as well.
I think we'll just keep seeing you every other week.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, every 3 weeks is our schedule. We're submitting another big chunk every 3 weeks, and so
crazy.
Yep.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so we'll be making a motion on item number 8 and then a separate motion on 13.
I'll motion on item 8 that we approve an ordinance amending the Desert Color Plan Development Residential PDR zone to allow a new neighborhood development to be known as Sage Haven, Pod 6, Plat A, on approximately 69.72 acres. I so move.
Second.
Motion by Motion by Vardell, seconded by Brian. All in favor, starting with Danielle.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Motion carries. And if someone would like to make a motion on item number 13.
I'll make a motion. We approve the preliminary plat for Desert Color Sage Haven Plat A.
Second.
Motion by Greg, seconded by Danielle. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right. Item number 9 is to consider approval of an ordinance amending the Boulder Creek Crossing Plan Development Commercial Zone to allow construction of a bank to be known as Alta Bank St. George on approximately 1.51 acres located on the northwest corner of 1450 South and River Road. Right there, outlined in blue. The zoning is PDC, which does allow for a bank in that zone, in that particular PD. The general plan calls for commercial. So the PD is compliant with the general plan. This is the site plan. You can see the bank, just a little over 4,300 square feet. They are, this pad here, you can see that says future office building. That will need to be maintained. That will be something in the future, but at this point they plan to just keep it maintained, probably gravelled, so that it's not growing weeds and things like that. They are compliant with the parking. I should get my staff report out here. Compliant with the parking, and sorry. Okay, so the code requires 250 squares. The code requires one space for every 250 square feet of gross floor area. So they're showing 23 stalls for the 4,300 square foot building, which exceeds the requirement for 18 stalls. So they are meeting the requirement for parking, as well as landscaping. Let's see. Yeah, they're showing the landscaping here. And they're meeting the 15 feet requirement for the landscaping along the frontages of the street. There is one thing we wanted to bring up. Actually, I'll bring that up in here in just a moment regarding 1450 South. But first, let's look at the building itself. They actually made application last year, and then they decided to go back and look at the architecture of the building. They changed up some of the materials and some of the architecture. They wanted it to fit in a little bit better with the city than what their prototype was, and so they made some changes, and this is what they are proposing. And I think I went past this. This is the materials. So they're looking at stone, looks like brick and limestone as well. So those are the materials. That's the architecture. The one thing I wanted to bring up, going the wrong way, 1450 South may require additional right-of-way in the future. And so the applicant has been working with staff on trying to make sure that we have adequate right-of-way for the extension of 1450 South. So staff would recommend that an additional condition be placed on the approval of this PD amendment, that the applicant continue to work with staff on the necessary right-of-way adjacent to 1450 South. If there are any other questions, Planning Commission did hear this and they recommended approval.
Questions, council? That right-of-way is very important because someday we do hope 1450 goes all the way west. If you have no
many years off, is it?
Sooner than later, hopefully.
Yeah.
Ready for motion? If
I'll make a motion to approve the ordinance amending the Boulder Creek Crossing Plan Development Commercial PDC Zone to allow construction of a bank to be known as Alta Bank St. George on approximately 1.51 acres located on the northwest corner of 1450 South and River Road.
second, and to work with staff on the right-of-way.
And work with staff on the right-of-way.
Second.
Motion by Brian, seconded by Danielle. All in favor, starting with Vardell.
Yes. Aye.
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 Aye. Wow. Motion carries.
I did this time. I'm sorry about that. Sorry about that. I think it's sharing. Okay. Are you ready? Okay, item 10 is a request to approve a preliminary plat for an 8-lot residential subdivision called Crimson Estates, size located approximately south side of 2450 South and 3430 East. Density is 0.81 dwelling units, and acre zone is A1. General plan is low density residential, and the representative is Bob Hermanson. So here's where it's located. It's right here on the south side of 2450. Again, it's right there. And it's these lots 8 right here. You know, the road was paved newly within the past couple of years, year or two or so ago. And normally what we've done in the past on these type of situations is where they've had to do a number of utility cuts into the pavement like this. Because the cuts then deteriorate the pavement, especially if they're not sealed, what we've required is the developer to go in and to install an HA5 over that paved surface to seal those cuts. So that'll be a requirement of the development, is to seal that with an HA5 over that frontage. They will be required to finish the frontage improvements along 2450. 3430 here is a chip sealed road. It doesn't really meet a city standard. It was just chip sealed to provide access in the past. And so they'll be required to remove that portion where pavement is to be installed and install new pavement and curb gutter and sidewalk along that.
Sorry, I just confused this because you skipped 10. That's okay.
But that's
let's
okay.
finish. No, we're going to finish it. Let's go.
We're going to finish this one.
We're on it. You were just seeing if we were paying attention.
I wrote the numbers wrong on the back.
My first clue was when Bob acted surprised when you mentioned his name. He was like, "Oh
my gosh,
it's my turn again already."
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
That's my fault.
Well, we're ready for a motion on number 12 then.
Motion to approve the preliminary plat for Crimson Estates subdivision.
Second.
Motion by Jimmy, seconded by Brian. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now we'll go to number 10.
Okay, sorry. I'm sorry about that.
Hey, it keeps us awake. We're like, Jimmy asked me, I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, let's see.
It's hard to stay awake in my stuff. Okay, so the next one is a request to approve a preliminary plat for a 6-lot residential subdivision called Rustic Estates. Location is approximately 1905 East Rustic Drive. Density is 2.5 dwelling units, and acre zone is R110. The applicant is Kuma Engineering. Representative is Brett Hankey or Jordan Houston. So this one is located right here, River Road, Rustic Drive, right there. It used to be an old farm. I'm sure you guys can tell me whose it was, but I can't remember at this moment. Bundy's, there you go. So that's it right there. So this is their subdivision layout. So this will be Lot 1. Lot 2 will be a flag lot with a staff that comes off of Rustic Drive there. Lot 3, Lot 4. Lot 5 is a unique lot in that it'll encompass, this is that utility building right here.
CenturyLink.
There you go. Thank you. Sorry. And so Lot 5 will basically surround that. Planning Commission did have some stress with that, but I think they worked it out in the end. Anyways, it'll just be a strange lot, but this is usable space, we felt like, and that too. And so I don't think staff really had too much of an issue with it. Lot 6 would be here where the existing home is. They do want to include Lot 2 with it, a little drainage corridor through here, because this lot will sit back. The grade of the land is away to the south, so they'd like to include that. Staff felt comfortable with that as long as they improve it in such a manner that it will actually drain the water from off of the site. Just don't leave it, but do something with it. So it'll be what we call a subdivision improvement, and so it'll be part of the subdivision improvements like a utility line or curb gutter sidewalk. We'll just have them design that and then build it with the subdivision improvements. Again, like the last one I was telling you about, they have a number of pavement cuts all throughout here, plus they have to extend the sewer down to here. And again, we're going to require them to install HA5 over that entire portion just because of the number of cuts to seal the pavement and help keep the water out. So it'll be similar to the other one. That'll just be a subdivision improvement as well.
Questions?
You're okay with the U-shaped lot and all that? Because wasn't the recommendation from the Planning Commission to not?
Yeah, they had some heartburn over it, but he's got 38 to 40 feet, I think, here, and so it's usable space. You could put a playground set in there. You could set up your little volleyball and have Sunday afternoon volleyball, which we do at my house.
Maybe you should buy the lot.
Yeah,
Nice.
I was
Sounds
thinking
like you
about
got it all planned out.
I do, and then you got my pool would be right here.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, we felt like it was usable space. The one we did have heartburn on a little bit was just this, because you can't do a lot with it, but make it a drainage corridor. And so that's why we asked, if that's your plan, let's improve it to get it out to River Road and make it function. So that was the only one we had a concern with.
I went down and met with Jordan today, and yeah, I was having heartburn over this because it's just such a strange configuration, but he did a good job explaining it to me, and they are working with a strange piece of property, so I'm okay with it now.
Yeah, I was going to say strange people because it's my family, but
some strange people and some strange properties.
Distant relatives. Distant. No, good people.
They are good.
I'll go ahead and make a motion if we're ready.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the preliminary plat for Rustic Estates.
Second.
Motion by Jimmy, seconded by Danielle. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 14, Mr. Guzman.
Oh, speaking of strange people, they're sitting in the back too.
Just walked in just in time.
Yeah. That was painless.
Mayor, Council, item number 14 is pretty straightforward, although it looks pretty lengthy. We have changed our ordinances to allow for a hearing officer. One of the remaining ordinances that was still in place from our old ordinances was the Board of Appeals. That is the board that hears appeals for decisions of our staff regarding the building codes. And so what we are proposing with this change is to do away with the Board of Appeals and the members that were required for that, and replace that with just a hearing officer that would hear any appeals. The reason why there are several sections listed in there is because we've referred to that hearing officer in each section of our code that refers to each part of the building code. Simplification.
Council, motion, have fun with this one.
Motion to approve item 14 as explained by Sean.
I like it. Second.
Second.
That's how I would have said it.
Motion by Jimmy, seconded by Danielle. This is ordinance. Starting with Bardell. All in favor, say aye.
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 You guys are all over the place. Motion carries. Number 15, Sean.
Item number 15, Mayor and Council, is even easier. We are proposing that we combine the St. George Museum Advisory Board into the St. George Arts Commission. Both of those were created by resolution. So what we have here is a resolution that would dissolve the Art Museum Advisory Board, and then the St. George Arts Commission would just simply take over those duties that were previously handled by the museum board.
Maybe, is that the way we're doing it by ordinance? Because we're actually, and then we're.
This is by resolution.
I mean by resolution?
Yes. They were created by resolution, so that's
Okay.
why we are disbanding it by resolution.
Okay. So we're disbanding it, but we're actually still keeping
The arts,
the people that are working with the museum, but
Right.
they're just under a different function.
they
Okay.
can just and the
I just wanted to make
resolution
sure
that
we were
created
saying it the right
Arts
way.
Commission is pretty broad, so it could absorb those duties easily under that
Okay.
current resolution.
Got it.
Motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the resolution dissolving the St. George Art Museum Advisory Board.
Second.
Motion by Danielle, seconded by Brian. All in favor, starting with Danielle.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Motion carries. I don't have any appointments. Any reports? Bardell, any reports? Greg? Brian?
I have reports for all of you. I have 5. The youth
Of course
city
she does.
I wrote them down so I wouldn't forget any. Tomorrow, Soup and Bowl at the Art Museum, 11 to 1. Come, and if you don't come, buy a $20 ticket and don't come to support the Art Museum. Saturday is the St. George Market, so come to that too from 10 to 6. The Dove Center's having their virtual gala at the end of the year, and tickets are available right now. And we have 3 new awesome members of the Art Commission. And then the last thing is just, I wanted to tell you guys that Brian and I got the opportunity to go to the Youth City Council yesterday, and they appointed a new mayor and city manager, and those kids are just amazing. And it was kind of emotional, huh, Brian? Like, they were just such impressive kids, and wow, we have great youth in our city. And they have actually requested to start coming to, maybe more events with us or coordinating more things with us. So I thought it would be fun for us, if you have something that you think the Youth City Council would really benefit from, let's shoot it out to them and invite them to come.
It was amazing. Their resumes and the way they handled themselves well, and even the outgoing mayor and city manager did an amazing job. But the 2 coming in were very excited, and I think they're going to do some great things for us this year with us.
I do have a couple of things. The snake was moved to the Snake Hollow Bike Park. Shane sent me a picture. It looks awesome there. It's where it needed to be. And Millennial Dawn, if you're not familiar with Millennial Dawn, she has her actual final resting place. She does. She's up on the corner of the Opera House. You'll notice she's over the whole city. And so we'll honor Eldine's an rest home, but have her family there. And we talked about we'll have a work meeting to meet down there. There's a plaque coming. And then one other quick thing is the chamber this year is recognizing outstanding women of achievement with their inaugural Element Award. And Danielle is getting an award, and so is Chili Ince with our police department. So, and they're having a dinner. You can sign up to go on March 26th if you want. There's I don't know how many women, 15 or something like that. Some great women in our community: Stephanie Bevins, Carmen Snow, Sherry Staley. A lot of them you'll know. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. And we do need a closed session for what?
For the purpose of property sale.
Okay, I'll have a motion.
Motion to adjourn to close meeting for discussion on property sale.
Second.
Possible.
Motion by Jimmy, seconded by Brian. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. We'll go into closed session.